Hello and welcome, everyone. This is Nicholas Hall, founder of Graham's Foundation. I'm here today with Jamie Rose, founder of Lambie's Love. Hey, Jamie.
Hi.
Hi, it's great to meet you.
Thank you so much. Same with you. And so, yeah, honored and grateful to be here.
Absolutely. So, if you wouldn't mind sharing with our preemie parents and our listeners a little bit more about yourself and your journey and the inspiration behind Lambie's Love.
Oh, sure. Thank you. I founded Lammy's Love in January of 2024. My daughter, Katherine Rose, was supposed to be born in December, December 5th, and she came super early in August. And so those just are not really great odds, worlds apart, really, from December to August.
Yeah.
But grateful to have her for the 8 days that I did in the NICU. And so during that time, from when she was born and then passed away up until the new year, when I founded the organization, just meeting, lots of friends and other parents of similar situations through the NICU world or parents of loss, and really asking them, what were things that were helpful in your journey, or what were things that you wish somebody had done for you, and just kind of, put all of that together and came up with a few different ideas for wanting to really leave this space better. And, often kind of a group of people or a scene that can be often overlooked. It's something people don't always want to think about, but it's still certainly a group of people that deserve and need that support and
Yeah.
care nonetheless. So, yeah.
Absolutely. Tell me about so I want to, I certainly want to know more about Lammie's Love and what you're doing to make a difference for those families going through the bereavement process. But can you share with us is there anything more, I guess, that you'd like to share about your journey beyond beyond sort of what you've shared so far? Is there anything more that I guess that you personally, what was helpful, what made a difference, and perhaps where you saw the opportunities in your own experience?
Sure, definitely. So, my pregnancy journey was pretty complicated. I feel like I had almost every complication or alarming symptom that someone could have, and so there were many times going to the ER pretty early, and it wouldn't look like things were going to be going well, but somehow she stayed with me, and we kept going, and so I remember that feeling, being earlier, maybe around 18 weeks, and thinking at that time, I loved my daughter just as much then as I do now, but counting down until I had made it to 20 or 22 weeks, whatever it was that they told me, there would be a chance they could do something. Because I remember those frequent hospital unexpected visits that would come up in the middle of the night or whenever. And I would say, well, what happens, if she is born this early? And during certain times, there's not really anything they can do. And so definitely my heart goes out, to earlier losses. I remember that, thinking that
Yeah.
was going to be my experience. And same with, later losses. And, it's hard no matter when that happens. But so during that time, I ended up being able to make it to 23 weeks and 6 days, is what I was on paper. I had always thought that I was a little bit further along. So I always kind of rounded it up one day apart and would just say 24 weeks to make it easier. Um, but I remember whenever I went to the hospital a week before I ended up going into preterm labor, they had said, you're going to be here for a long time, as long as we can keep you for, that could be weeks or months, but you're not going anywhere. You're here, you're in good hands. And so that week went by, and then all of a sudden my water had broke, and I had to have an emergency C-section. And
Mhm.
so I remember them, reading you the statistics and the odds for a baby born so early,
Yeah,
for what that looked like, the survival, rate statistics, and just the whole process of, them, I guess, even transporting your baby to the NICU, what that would look like when they're born so early.
yeah,
Definitely different, especially as a first time parent, than anything would usually see on TV and the movies from other friends and family members, their experiences. And so for me, that was really the first time I had even heard of the term a micro preemie. That wasn't something I knew of, had no idea what that was. And so my daughter was born 1 pound, 3 ounces, again, at pretty much 24 weeks, 23 weeks and 6 days.
yeah.
And so that classified her as a micro preemie. And she was born, yeah, just beautiful and perfect, just, super duper early. So yeah, so I got to have her in the NICU for 8 days.
I'm curious, and I'm sorry for your loss. I know we both know what that's it's a shared experience that we have. Um, do you feel like you were having enough conversations with the doctors to have an idea of what to expect? I mean, I appreciate what they were sharing in terms of we want you to be here for a long stay because being here for a long stay, whether your daughter's born whenever she's born, if they're born early, they are going to need if they live and you bring them home, they will need a long stay. That's the thing.
Um,
One of those. It's one of those things. We both know when you're born when they're born super early, you are hoping for a long stay. Did you have because you had the early indications? Were you able to feel like you were somewhat prepared for what happened?
no, really not at all. So it was an interesting journey for me. So I actually started off at a different hospital than where I delivered at. Um, and that's where I had gone to the ER there, at that hospital with my original doctor. Um, and things just continued to not always look great, or um, kind of, maybe they're, at some point it's really hard to pick, as a new parent, you're thinking, do I pick almost the poison I know versus one I don't know and go start over somewhere new? But sometimes you realize, that's probably the best decision for me to go somewhere new. So I actually ended up going to a new hospital the day that I was admitted long term there, and where I delivered at. And so I was in the process of switching to a doctor at that new hospital. And actually, the day I went into labor was the day that they were going to wheel me down over to his floor and have my first appointment with him. So I didn't actually meet him until after my daughter was born and passed
Yeah.
away. But the team that I had was really amazing. The moment I got there, they offered me all the different options as far as, injections to speed up their lungs. But with anything they offered, it was never, really pressured. It was, they gave me their advice and left those decisions to me. And I appreciated that. And as a new parent, I wanted, their input and their guidance. And that's what I had been asking for so many times before, for weeks and months. Is there anything I can do? Well, in these potential hypothetical situations, what would I do at this week or that week?
Yeah.
So I finally kind of felt like some, people were listening, or,
Mm.
not just brushing these alarming symptoms off. And so I could tell a difference and felt like I really was in good hands. And I know at that point they had, did everything that they could for me. And so that morning, it probably was like 3 something when my water broke. Um,
Right.
and that doctor that was there at that time, she, was very, calm and peaceful and very honest too. And said she was going to check with, the team and some other doctors and see how, my body was doing to see if it was possible for my daughter, to stay put or, even though my water had broke, or if I would need to have that emergency C-section. And so it was really her time to go off shift. And she stayed, along with the new nurse that came in, our doctor, and they said, you know what, this is such a, special time. You're going to have two, isn't that awesome? And so I know they were so kind and trying to make things as, uplifting as they could. And one of
Yeah.
the things that always stands out to me is having a daughter. I really couldn't imagine being a boy mom in that situation, because sometimes whether things are said or not, you can feel it, you can read the room and hear the unspoken things. And I know something that all the doctors and nurses would ask whenever they would walk by, is they would say, is this a baby boy or a baby girl? And I would say, it's a baby girl, my daughter that I'm having. And you could see the relief and they'd say, oh, good. Oh, good. Okay, well, why is that? Why? And so I remember somebody telling me that I guess the odds are maybe better for a baby girl than a baby boy. And so I just remember thinking, oh my word, well, what if I was having a son? Then it's just going to be crickets that you hear after instead of those, oh, good, everyone takes a breath of relief. So again, I couldn't even imagine that situation. But everyone would always say the next question, so what's your daughter's name? And I'd say Catherine. And they'd say, oh, that's a princess name. So she kind of had the nickname Princess Catherine.
Mm.
So everyone said, Princess Catherine, this and that. Okay, today's the day, August 14th. We're going to have Princess Catherine. And so I think usually in my life, I definitely have been the person that, was super planned, had my daughter's name picked out since I was in middle school, would have been one of those people, oddly enough, and ironically, that for sure would have had matching outfits. I joke all the time and think, being honest, I probably would have been the person that brought the organic baby shampoo and been like, can we use this instead of, the hospital stuff? And it's like, okay, well, this turns out to be the craziest story because none of that is happening. This is
Yeah.
the most crazy thing. And
Yeah.
just, yeah, definitely not a birth story or picture or movie of what
The
you.
story, but not what's told in the movies, right? Not what you
Oh,
see in the
yes.
movies.
And so
Did you
for
did,
me,
did you end up switching hospitals because the hospital where you delivered was just better prepared for a baby born early, or was it just more like you just weren't getting a little bit more, you weren't getting what you needed at the other, you know?
that's a good way to word it. Yes, I guess I would say I wasn't really getting what I needed at my original hospital with my original doctor. And again, for me, never thought that I would, be needing the NICU or having a baby born early or have any complications throughout my pregnancy or anything like that. But kind of being that researcher and planner, I, had a whole list of all the level 4 NICUs in the whole area just in case, and wanted to make sure that that's where I had delivered or found a doctor at. So my original doctor office and a hospital was equipped. It just ended up, being a better decision for me to go
Yeah.
to where I delivered at.
Yeah, I mean, medicine is no different than it's different, but with restaurants or other types of places of service, there's there's having the ability to, and then there's having the experience. Um, if it's a level 3 neonatal intensive care unit, they can care for micro preemies. They can, in terms of they have the technical, the right or the ability to do it. And some some are just better than others. Some are better equipped. Some are larger, so they have more experience. Some specialize have, developed a specialization in caring for very early preemies or other types, maybe heart issues, other types of conditions. And when we're adults, of course, when we have a particular diagnosis, we have oftentimes we have some time to do some research and try and figure out where's the best place to go for the care that we need. But oftentimes with premature birth, you don't get a lot of heads up. And even if you get a lot of heads up, chances are you and people in your family don't necessarily have a lot of current relevant experience. So
Absolutely.
so I've been through it. So I could do a little research and make contacts and probably find, the top couple of places to have a micro preemie in the Dallas Fort Worth area. But if you asked me that before having gone through the experience, I wouldn't what questions do you ask? How do you determine, where do they have a specialty or a particular experience? So I know that's a challenge for a lot of parents. Um, so your baby born at 24 weeks, um, and yes, girls do better. As I understand it, their lungs develop sooner than boys, and so that's one of the key things for babies to ultimately develop. It's like they have to eventually breathe on their own, right?
Absolutely.
Um, what was, I guess, after your daughter Catherine was born, did they have a particular, did they have any sort of prognosis? Did they do any, I know that ultimately you find out that the days and weeks, yes, they matter, but every baby born has developed to a certain point,
Right.
and that some are just more developed than others, regardless of what the weeks or days. So just kind of, did they give you any sort of any sort of feedback, or what was their what was their communication like after your baby was born?
The hospital where I delivered at, they were really great and wonderful. They kept me updated the whole time with what to expect, really day to day and in the first week, and just were really compassionate. They just let me know about what testings to expect and how she was doing. Um, and they were always careful with their words, and they would say that she was doing well without giving false hope and things like that. For me, it still surprises me sometimes thinking back, because I have had many surgeries, especially for being kind of younger in my age. And so for me, going and at first have thinking I'd have to have an emergency C-section probably wasn't even as like terrifying as it might have been for somebody that had never had surgery before. The situation, with your child and things like that absolutely is the most, horrific and stressful thing, and definitely different than any other surgeries. But I'm sure there's families out there that had never even been to a hospital maybe, or had surgery or anything like that. And
Mhm.
so in my past, I've been, pretty good about being able to advocate for myself or even other family members or friends, and being involved and knowing that, at the end of the day, it is practicing medicine, everyone's doing their best, but, each person and patient is so unique, and, you know, no one can advocate for you like yourself, and you're the one that's there and knowing your symptoms and this and that. And in this situation, it was so different with my daughter. I don't know if I, just thought, well, I'm not the expert here. I'm a new mom and this is their field and specialty. Leave all of this to the experts. I'll do what I can, but, you know, there's not a whole lot that parents, especially of preemies, are given to do to help. One of the things you can do is, if you're able to and your body allows, to pump, to be able to feed them that way since they can't have formula. And my care team was really great for my daughter, her care team, I should say. They were always saying, anything that you can do, if you want to, touch her or try, feeding her through like something that looks almost like a Q-tip that they put like in the
Yeah.
breast milk and feed them. And I remember just being so terrified. You would read this little sign outside the NICU that says something about, make sure you're so quiet in there. And even whenever the little door that you can open to put your hand in their incubator and, try to barely touch them with your finger, make sure you close it or open it so quietly because the decibels of the volume for them is so loud. And I remember thinking, oh my goodness, maybe I shouldn't even open it, or, I don't want it to hurt her
Oh,
ears, and should I just let her, not be touched and just grow and not be bothered as much as she could? And so, even trying to speak to her or, read a book or say a prayer or anything like that. I mean, I'm sure I was whispering so quiet, I don't even, I'm not sure, but so I think there were, stressful things like that, that sometimes people, mean well,
yeah.
these signs or this or that, but definitely as a new parent, it can be overwhelming, or you don't know what to think or how to balance all of that. And so I remember thinking the whole time, maybe the best thing for me at that time to do was to be, anytime I sat anywhere or anything, to be as out of the way as I could. That way, if there was an emergency, the people that quote, quote, could actually help could come in and do what they need to do. And I remember my daughter's care team saying, like, no, that's okay. Like, you don't have to jump up out of that chair and, like, run to the corner of the wall anytime we walk in. Like, you're her mom, if you want to be here, you should be here, and, just take advantage of this time and, enjoy your time with her. And so looking back, I definitely wish I had embraced that more. But at the same time, it's so good and important to have grace for ourselves as parents, knowing that we're doing the best we can. And, this is just a really crazy situation to be in, for sure. So yeah, so it was a little different. And I think too, just really being in shock, I've heard that word before, but I think until you really, experience it in that way, trying to wrap my mind around that I had a baby, right? The first time I go to see her, later that evening when they wheeled me back, after my C-section and all of that, I remember thinking, okay, well, her baby shower was going to be, like in a week or two, or, so is she here? How is she here?
Yeah.
Her baby shower hasn't come yet, and this and that. And so I think, between that and just having surgery and, hearing those statistical odds of the survival rate and trying to balance and navigate all of that, along with trying to be strong, right? As parents, you're like, I don't want to cry in front of my baby. I want to smile or be happy. And so it is hard, going down the halls of labor and delivery after you've had an emergency surgery, using your arms, trying to, as if you're jogging, like as much help as you can get just to even walk down to the NICU and, you know, walking past the doors of many other families excited with their new one, getting to hold their little one or feed them or have all their family visit, is definitely different. It's just a whole different world there. And so you try to be as positive as you can, but it's for sure overwhelming to say the least.
Yeah. There's no amount of information or education or preparation that I think that's going to prevent the real human just experience of feeling everything that you just shared, all the feelings um, that you felt. It's and yes, having compassionate doctors and nurses makes, a huge difference. There's so many things that can help, can make a difference. And with all that, it's still going to be scary and overwhelming, and that's to be expected in that kind of a situation.
Oh, yeah, and I think that's probably the first time I really understood how they say you can have 2 emotions even if they are conflicting at the same time, just like they say you can have grief and love at the same time and hold that in your heart. I
Yeah.
remember that feeling of there's nowhere more that I wanna be and don't wanna be than in the NICU. I love seeing my daughter, I just wanna be, by her side, but at the same time, it's so challenging to watch your child, with all the wires and tubes and medical things going on. And so it's kind of the word, bittersweet. It's a joy, but it's a pain, a
Yeah.
heartache at the same time. So that was new and interesting and part of the journey. And at the NICU that I delivered at, which was amazing, at the time they didn't have those rooms that you could stay in. So I had to travel back and forth like 3 times, a day, going from home to up there visiting her, and then sleeping back at home. But, as soon as in the morning or afternoon or evening, going back up to visit. And they have a whole area now for families to be able to stay, which is great and amazing. But at the time that I was there, that was, part of my journey and experience too, that might be relatable or different from certain
Yeah.
families. So,
I visited enough neonatal intensive care units to know that no one is the same. Some felt like I was at, the Taj Mahal. It was so fancy. And some, like the one where I was, in a community hospital setting, and there was no family lounge. We didn't have lockers. We didn't have any, nothing separate. So kind of runs the gamut. Um, when your daughter Catherine passed, did you have were you aware? Did you have time? Or was it kind of a sudden?
it was very sudden. So, um, I had been waiting for that week, that first week, of her life and, time in the NICU, that they had told me from the very beginning, with things to expect, that after that first week, she would have a brain scan to see if she had any brain bleeding. And I think there was something else they were looking or testing for too. And I remember them saying, with babies born so extremely premature, like your daughter, that's something that you kind of could expect. And that's not necessarily, bad or, long term problematic. But just be aware, that that's something you should probably expect. And so I remember waiting and waiting for that, first week for them to do the testing, and they did it the morning of the eighth day. And so I remember getting that phone call when I was at home in the morning, them letting me know that they did the testing and that she didn't have any brain bleeds, and that, even throughout that whole week she was there in 8 days, they always wanted to say she's doing well, but
Right.
we're not supposed to say that, and we have to be careful with what we say, and you always have to keep your expectations right. But long story short, she, did so well, most of her whole time there in the NICU. But that roller coaster ride and just, the reality of the NICU, things can take a turn at any moment unexpectedly or however. And so I remember being on top of the world, in the morning, getting that phone call, feeling like I just was on the highest mountain that could ever exist, and just so overjoyed, and really finally felt like, okay, my shoulders can come down from my ears and from my neck. I can try to take a breath, and it's been a whole week. I didn't want to let myself believe she could be okay, or and so I think that was the time I finally did that, and went to visit her in the morning, went to visit her in the afternoon. And even in the evening, I had just left her and went home to make dinner. And I remember in the middle of cooking, the hospital called me and they said, hey, we just wanted to see where you were at right now, and let you know that your daughter is not doing great. So you want to come here, as soon as you can, like immediately. She's going to need to have emergency surgery. I believe that her intestines had ruptured, is what they were saying, which can lead to, the neck infection and things like that. And so I remember I said, okay, I will be there right now. And I remember they had said it like two more times, and they said, okay, so you're going to hang up the phone and you're going to get in your car and you're going to drive right here. And I said, yes, like, of course, you just told me my daughter needs surgery. I'll do that. And they said, okay. And then they said it again. So you're going to hang up the phone and you're going to come right here. And I said, yes, I will. And I hung up the phone, and you know, why in the
Yeah.
world when somebody say it like that and three times, this is not good. And so I got there right away, went straight there, and I remember they, gathered me in a room off to the side to wait for, if I, had requested like a chaplain to come, or, some other nurses or doctors to give us an update, because they went straight into doing that surgery there. And so, again, the roller coaster ride and the ups and downs of the emotion, and just minute to minute what the game plan even is. I remember that the doctor came in, hours later and had said, okay, so, we did the surgery, she's doing okay in this moment, this is what it's going to look like, though, the next few weeks and what you can expect. And, in the middle of hearing this, this new game plan and how she made it through the surgery, at least, nurses came in and, where's mom? Where's the parents? We need her right away. And she just was taking a turn, and it was not good at all. And so, yeah, being rushed over to her NICU pod area, and just, uh, you know, um,
Mhm.
her declining really, more and more.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, so it definitely is something you're, not prepared for. And even minute to minute, moment to moment, it can drastically change from being okay or thriving, doing well, to not good.
Yeah. I tell people it's like your life is on hold. Um, and it is, it's the yin and the yang, and it's literally, it is, you really get present to the minute by minute, experience of life.
Oh, yes, absolutely. And
Yeah.
so for me, the first time I actually was able to hold her at all was actually after she had passed away. So with babies born so early, and for micro preemies, a lot of times parents and families aren't able to really hold them or touch them or things like that. And so that was the first time I was able to hold
Mm,
her. So
mm. And how, again, I'm feeling for you. I'm feeling it. I know what that's like. Uh, what was your experience at, thinking back, just, giving you the space and time to to hold your daughter, and how, I guess, did you feel supported? Did you feel, what was helpful? And again, is there any sort of lessons learned for yourself, or perhaps for others, if any?
I remember that time. It felt like hours and hours and years of my life, as she's passing away. I'm not sure if the reality was it was just 1 hour of that going on as they're, doing resuscitations and things like that. Um, or how long it was, but it felt like, and in a sense it was a lifetime, right? And so I remember thinking that I had wished that during that time I really was able to be making some sort of memories or, bonding with her. And, had I been able to read her, a baby book, that wasn't something I ever did, um, while she was alive or in the NICU there. And just other things like that, around you for, trying to have meaningful items of comfort and care. There, I had no photos, no family photos, no, stuffed animal or blanket, no music playlist, a book, even family members to some extent. It definitely is, you know, an interesting thing having a baby so born so early and unexpectedly going to the hospital, and the NICU, just not having anything. And so, what do you do with all that love? What do you do with that grief? And, trying to make the most of that time that's so short that you have with your child right then, is something that's really hard. And so that's one of the reasons why for our bereavement boxes, we have the items that we do inside and why we donate them up front. That way, during that time when nurses and staff, are realizing it's time to say goodbye, they can bring that out to families for them to start using right away. Was something that, I had wished that
Mm.
maybe, was just better in standard bereavement care all throughout, nothing against my hospital, but just
Yeah,
the way
yeah.
that things had standard been done really before. Um, but I know that they were really great and they had said, you can stay here all night because it almost, I think, was getting close to midnight by the time she passed away,
Yeah.
maybe an hour before that. And they were saying, take, all the time you need, and I just remember having felt like,
Mm.
the world is standing still. You feel so almost like empty and in disbelief. And this is, I'm sure part of you is kind of, thinking, can I even like barter, at all with life or world or, God or whoever for each person, and, thinking, is there anything I could do? Is there anything I could trade? Is there anything to make this not real right now? If I close my eyes and think of something or picture something or
Mm.
anything, is there any way for me to make this not real? You don't want to, accept it, but part of you is still trying to be strong and then trying to think. Your brain's going 100 miles a minute. Okay, what do I need to do? How do I, fit a lifetime of moments and memories and hopes and dreams into 30 minutes or an hour or whatever it is? And so I had wished that I, was able to hold my daughter when she was alive. And, I wish I was able to read to her and things like that. And even, my experience of getting to hold her, a baby so teeny tiny, 1 pound, 3 ounces, especially after going through so much, resuscitation and CPR and things like that. They're pretty fragile, to say the least. And so it was difficult to try to hold her or really embrace her. And so that's another reason why we have blankets in our bereavement boxes to be able to kind of cushion up under them. Or if you are passing around your baby from, one person to another, it just can really hold them better and be able to snuggle them or, be close to them. Um, so yeah, things you learned that, you wish you had or,
Yeah. Could you
yeah.
share with us, obviously, when people go through experiences, they can really be transformative and obvious, and you were clearly inspired um, to want to make a difference for future families, recognizing that despite everything that modern medicine can do, it's not gonna keep this from this is gonna happen to future parents because you know
Yes,
having
absolutely.
babies is a dynamic, miraculous, but dangerous uh, proposition. So
It
tell me,
it
yeah,
is.
tell me more about, yeah, the inspiration for Lambie's love and of course how it is what it is you're doing and how you're doing it.
Sure, thank you. So One of the things, even though, didn't really have any items of comfort or care there during that time of her passing or even stay in the NICU, I had a friend that had picked out a stuffed animal pair, that they were going to give to me later on for me being at home and my daughter being in the NICU. And so they're almost like a little matching pair, or pair that, their arms can Velcro and hug each other or something like that. And so the idea was that one would stay with my daughter in the NICU and the other little stuffed animal would be at home with me, and we would still be connected together. And so, whenever they received that news that night that my daughter had just passed away, and I was still at the NICU, before going back home, they rushed up there and brought that stuffed animal pair to me. And I remember thinking, what a gift and blessing that was, to be able to, something so in out of order, an out of order death, something you never planned for in your life, the unimaginable that could happen, losing a child, that, through that, it's not just their passing. A lot of people think it's that, and it's a very traumatic time. But also having to, leave your baby there after they pass away and go back
Yeah.
home is was really just so challenging for me, because I just remember always thinking, it doesn't matter where you are, even at a doctor office, you wouldn't leave a baby by themselves, you wouldn't this and that. And so it was foreign. It didn't feel normal, and is not something you want to do. You want them with you all the time. And so that was really challenging, but I had the comfort to have that stuffed animal pair and at least tell myself on that whole ride home and that whole night and the next morning, okay, as I'm hugging this stuffed animal, my daughter has the matching one, and we're connected. And just some amount of, it's hard to use a word like peace or comfort in a moment like that, but something, some sort of aid at all whatsoever. And so that really was the inspiration behind Lambie's love, was to have, because the stuffed animal pair was a lamb for me and my daughter. I have the white one, that's our mascot, Lambie, and then my daughter is
Mhm.
buried with the pink one, the pink matching lamb. And so that's where we get our name from, and why in every bereavement box that we have a stuffed animal pair there. And we always say there's no right or wrong way to use any of the items in our bereavement boxes. We have ideas and inspiration for how we think they can be helpful, but any which way a family or parents want to use them is just fine. And so in our bereavement boxes, we have stuffed animal pairs, a baby dedication book, we call it, that they can read to their baby, as they're having to say goodbye or even afterward. An adult self help grief book, to learn how to navigate, a life with grief. And we have a pocket token. It looks like a little quarter on a keychain, that you can easily put in your pants pocket as you go back to work, on your car keychain, even on a existing sibling's backpack as they go back to school, or however.
Yeah.
Blankets we had talked about, and the bereavement boxes themselves, to be able to hold items of the babies, from, maybe baby shower cards or sympathy funeral cards, or, their items and belongings from the NICU. And so we have boxes for girls, boxes for boys. We call it a gender neutral backup box, in case the hospital runs out of one or the other, then they have one that, is a neutral theme. And we have boxes for twin families as well. And so we just wanted to be able to donate them up front to all of the hospitals, that we're at. That way they can really use them in real time, and to, try as much as possible to make those memories, and just reduce a lot of the trauma.
Yeah. And are you working primarily with neonatal intensive care units and you're in the Dallas Fort Worth area at this time?
We are, yes. We're in, over 14 hospitals around Dallas, Fort Worth. in surrounding areas, the NICUs, level 3 and 4, mostly level 4, but some level 3 NICUs as well. And We do have the capability, though, to ship or donate or deliver out of state as well. If there's families or NICUs that are interested, we're glad to, um, have the boxes to help as many families as we can all over.
Yeah. I know the cost of shipping ain't free, as they say.
Oh,
So,
yes.
and with with the boxes and all the wonderful things that you have included, I know that's something you have to consider when working with neonatal
Yes.
intensive care units outside of your out
Oh,
of your
yes.
local area.
And that
So,
was another thing too for us, especially me having a micro preemie. I remember seeing photos of, which is really funny because I had many experiences in the childcare world, and having a younger sibling even. Used to be called like the baby whisperer. And so I could tell you exactly how old the little one was, by looking at them. And after having my daughter, every baby looked like they were giant, or a year
right,
old when they're
right,
a few months old. And so
right,
trying to be, thoughtful and consider families like that. Obviously, not every family in the NICU has a preemie, but
yeah,
a lot or some of them do. And so trying to make sure and gauge the items we put in there being the right size for that too. So for like a stuffed animal pair, not, trying to find one that was, so huge that it overtook, the
yeah,
baby or by
right,
them. And so, yeah.
right. And what have I guess some of the things that you've some of the surprises of founding Lammy's Love and just getting out there and doing the work that you're doing? What have been some of the pleasant surprises and some of the if there's have there been any unforeseen challenges that you didn't expect?
There's been a lot of challenges, certainly. I think sometimes doing, heavy and hard work and trying to do something beautiful that's really helpful and needed, you would think it would be a lot easier going to some extent. But I've learned that people want to help, they just don't always know who or what even exists to help or what a great thing is. And so, working on sharing about our organization and spreading the news of what we're doing and what we're our mission, and trying to help families in that way is
Yeah.
an important thing, because people can't help if they don't know about you. And so there's been challenges there. um,
Yeah, and just some of the, with starting a not, I mean, starting a nonprofit, right?
oh
One thing that I know a lot of people are inspired after they've been through an experience, they want to make a difference. They want to do something so that families that come after them, have a somehow, a somewhat better, slightly or incredibly greater experience than themselves. So there's the inspiration to make a difference, and then there is the setting up a nonprofit and raising the money, like
oh yes.
regardless of what it is that you're doing, because we find, we're like, it's so personal to us, right? Being
Yes.
able to sort of balance the personal with the, yeah, there is an endless supply of trauma and tragedy and challenges that we go through as humans. And so,
Yes,
so being
definitely.
able to being able to connect with others that can appreciate what it is you're trying to do and appreciate it and then want to either, volunteer or make donations, et cetera, is it's not easy.
Oh, yes. So, yeah, absolutely. Just from, as being the founder at the beginning, wearing every hat imaginable under the sun, from being the receptionist person to the IT person to ordering, the shipments and doing the deliveries is a whole lot. And, they say burnout is real, one
Yeah.
person just taking on so much.
Yeah.
And then in additional to that, having your own grief and grief
Um,
life and journey. and then all the stories of the families that you honor or what you're doing it very, intentionally and with as much respect and care as you can is a whole nother job. It's never something that, you know, anyone on the board or myself that we just do or go through the motions. It is so personal and so important that that's another whole layer that can, be
Yeah.
taxing at times. So yeah, but one of the things that I've learned throughout this journey is how important advocacy is. If you're able to do that, not everyone is able to talk about their experiences, and some people don't want to, and that's okay. Absolutely. Each person and parent should do as they feel right in their heart and with, their families. But I've learned that, there were a group of people like nurses, churches, family, friends, neighbors that wanted to help, but they had no idea what items were helpful, or what things they think might be helpful, but were actually kind of triggering, or wouldn't be appropriate to gift and things like that. And so I thought, well, here's a group of people wanting to help, and then a group of people, parents, that a lot of times aren't able to talk and advocate what is helpful. And so there's a group of people needing and deserving that care and support, but not really getting it. And so I thought, if I'm able to, I'm going to do that. And definitely with House Bill 37 that went to pass in Texas for better bereavement care last September, I was able to go to the Capitol in Austin and address the Senate with a group of other people to help try to advocate for that bill. And I just love sharing that story to help other people and families be encouraged that you don't have to have a background in that. That does not have to be, something that you've done professionally. You just have to have the passion and the knowledge and the personal experience, and, to be brave and use your voice, and that it does make a difference. We might not always see those things come to light the very next day or the next year, but
Yeah.
slowly here and there, planting seeds and talking about things and doing what we can really truly does make a difference.
Yeah, absolutely. And our vision at Grams is no parent goes through this journey alone. And where they find, how and where and what that those parents find to support them, we're all different. We all find different ways to support those families going through that journey. And so, you obviously, Lambie's love. I think of Grams as it's this safety. The parents are flying on the trapeze, and there's this net that exists, but they don't know that they're not aware of the net, because how could they? They weren't planning on flying on that trapeze.
Oh, yeah.
And that, so we're all Grams and Lammy's love. We're all we're a little contribution to that safety net. And, we're going to have an opportunity to make a difference for families when they need it. We don't know
Oh,
when they'll need it, but we know that they'll need it.
absolutely. That's what we would always say and share too. We would always say, we wish there wasn't a need for our organization to exist, but the reality is there is. And so, because there is a need, we're
Yeah.
glad to be here to help. But we wish, that we weren't, and it was a different world and life. But that's one of the things too that I think has been really special is, sharing our stories and having the chance to do that when we can. There's things that you forget even from your own journey sometimes. And when you hear other people share things, it's like, oh my goodness, that was part of my story too. Or, being able to word even sometimes how you felt can help put a word to a feeling for another parent or person struggling to communicate or figure out or even process, how do I put this into words, what I was feeling or experiencing, to help their support system really understand them better. And something from the beginning that I saw pretty frequently was existing parents. Who had been in this world and on this journey for a while, talk about the support and care that would come in initially, and then it would kind of trickle off, or they would feel like their family or their child might have been forgotten about or overlooked. And so that was one of the things too with our organization and charity that we wanted to do. Our bereavement boxes go to help new families of loss, and with each donation we make it in honor of an existing family of loss, because we want them to know that, you know, your little one is always remembered and loved and celebrated no matter how long it's been, and that every life does make a difference.
Yeah. I know you're gonna be recognizing Graham's Foundation later this year, and we really Graham and Graham's Foundation, we really appreciate that.
Oh, it's our joy and honor. Thank you.
Yeah, and well, thanks, Jamie, for taking the time with
Thank
me and
you,
with us
Nicholas.
today and sharing your story and your journey and what you're doing to make a difference for families out there. We really appreciate it.
Thank you too. And yeah, thank you to everyone at Graham's Foundation.